Go ahead now.
Cool. You can't even be aware of the creation of, you can't even be aware of creation without the presence of thought. Thought is the missing link between mental sickness and mental health. Thought is also the missing link between happiness and sadness. Your personal mind activates your thoughts and makes them good or bad. You have no control over what others think, but you do have the power to control what you think. Our thoughts are the camera, our eyes are the lens. Put them together and you have a picture, and the picture we see is reality. In the silence beyond all things lies the divine knowledge that will help guide you through life. Look within your own consciousness, for here lies the answer to all of humanity's problems.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so I have something to say.
Sure, go ahead, Ofer.
It's at the bottom of page 54. It said, you have no control over what others think, but you do have the power to control what you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily, I don't know if it's like, I don't think I can control my thoughts. I mean, they just pop, you know? And it's like you said, what happened, I mean, it's like you said, what happened in Barcelona to me. You know, thoughts come, and what I can control is that, like how I relate to them, and not exactly the thoughts itself. And I think that's a very important distinction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, but you know, he's trying to point to the fact that what you do have control of, depending on your level of understanding, is what thoughts you had about your thoughts, that the experience that you had. So you had a choice, you experienced a choice there to not be, based on your level of understanding, to not be terrified by the experience you were having, and to not think a lot about that experience. So that's when the choice comes in. I think, you know, any one statement like this, you think it's covering all things, but I think that's what he's pointing to, at least in being my time with Sid, is that if you're not frightened by your experience, then you have control over what you do at that point with this power of thought. Whether you try to engage the personal intellect, or whether with your level of understanding, you know when to leave your thinking alone. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree? Yeah, but I hear you. Again, I think that's difficult for people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I try to tell people, if you read the two things together, your personal mind activates your thoughts and makes them good or bad. So in other words, you have thoughts, and then your mind goes to work on those thoughts.
Right.
And then the next paragraph, he says you have the power to control what you think. And I think, you know, what's really implicit in there is that you do have the power to control what you make of what you think. You know, what your personal mind does with those thoughts that pop into your mind, because I think all of us experience that we have thoughts we never expected to have.
And what we make of it is the only thing as human beings that we can do to use to make something of something is thought.
Right.
Right. So we are then using thought to make whatever we make of it, and so we are using thought. It's not separate.
Yeah.
And that's you know, that's where the freedom lies. I thought of Viktor Frankl again this weekend, that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And it is in that space that our freedom lies.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is that the more people understand the principles, that what happens is that space becomes more accessible. If you, in the world of form, it's like it becomes bigger, becomes more of a space. And obviously Viktor Frankl saw that. Here's a man 3.5 years in the death camp, who lost many family members, including his wife and his pregnant, with her pregnant baby, and his family, etc. And yet, by all of our present model of trauma, he should have died 20 to 25 years earlier. That's what people with severe chronic PTSD die, and they die of heart disease, of cancers, of the chronic state of mental stress. But he lived to be 92 and wrote 16 books. So he somehow, long before the principles were elucidated, he saw how the system works, and he experienced that freedom between the stimulus and the response that most of us, myself at least, until I was 41, had no idea that space existed. I was pretty much most of the time at the mercy of whatever stimulus I was exposed to. Did I freeze up, or could people hear me? Or?
We heard you.
You're good, you're good.
Is that, am I off, or does that resonate or not? Or
No, that's good.
okay.
Oh, that's good.
Do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, sure.
Your thoughts are like the artist's brush. They create a personal picture of the reality you live in. Thought, like the rudder of a ship, steers us to the safety of open waters or to the doom of rocky shores. The wise man says, I think, therefore I am. The fool says, I don't think so. People often speculate how many components there are to thought. There are no components to thought. Thought is a divine power. It's an element that can never be broken down into smaller segments. It is we human beings that use thought to produce such things as our feelings, moods, and our overall perceptions of life. Thought can be used in an infinite number of ways.
Wow. Last I looked, that's a really big number.
Yeah. See, but I think that goes again to the simplicity of it, that you can break it down and talk about good thoughts and bad thoughts and all these other words that crop up that we use to judge our thoughts. But if you see that thought is just one thing, it's a divine power.
Right.
That's before you form anything from it.
Right. Right.
And that power can create anything, but it doesn't matter what it creates. It's the power that gives us the opportunity to create again.
But we're going to experience whatever.
Right. We're going to experience it, but then we have the power to let it go and start over again.
Right.
The important thing is that thought is energetic and not formed.
Right. Anybody? Should we go forward, or does anybody have anything about this page that jumps out? I like the thought, like the rudder of a ship steers us to the safety of open waters or the doom of rocky shores. And for some reason, I think of Chip Chipman talking about this couple that that had this guide that for 30 years had been guiding people through this place in Newfoundland that you come into, and it has incredible, huge rocks that are submerged, that have sunk many, many, many ships. And the wife says to, and I don't know if this is truly related to this, but the wife says to the guide, she says, do you know where all the submerged rocks are? And the guy said, no, I don't, but I know where they aren't. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Is know where they aren't.
Yeah.
So in a way, I don't know, that somehow that triggered that for me, that the more understanding we have, we use that, we kind of know where to put the rudder.
Where not to go with it, yeah.
Yeah, we know where not to go with it, yeah. And that usually leads us, because at some level, then we're guided to know where to go. All we have to first do, the first step is to know where not to go, not to head to the rocks. And then there's a internal guidance system that is part of the system that, to the degree we allow ourselves to get quiet enough, then we'll be guided where they aren't. Anyway, so anybody before we move?
Nope. It's your turn.
Okay. My turn?
Mm-hmm.
The more we dwell on the positive side of life, the more hope becomes a beacon, attracting positivity into our lives and guiding us to a steadfast and more contented way of life. Many people make the mistake of believing that their moods create their thoughts. In reality, it is their thoughts that produce their moods. Wow. The personal mind is the creator of all activity. The personal mind is the creator of all misery, all expectations, all ideas, and all false deities. Hope and faith go together. With hope and faith in your heart, you will find the perfect path that you seek. The one thing I'll say, and then be open, is that to me that last line goes along with understanding. The more understanding you have of what the system is and how it works, it is natural for you to have faith and hope because you know how it works. And so of course, even in a difficult experience, like I think Ofer, of the incredible experience that you had, that with the understanding that you had, there was clear hope and faith that wasn't going to be the way it was going to be the rest of your life, or even for a prolonged period of time. And that comes from, I think, the hope and faith is a natural outgrowth, doesn't seem like the right word, but a natural overflow of the understanding. The more understanding we have, it's like, George likes to use that metaphor of the more understanding that you have, all boats rise. Relationships are easier, difficult consequences, difficult things in life, health-wise, financial, all boats rise with a new level of understanding, deeper level of understanding. Anyway.
I want to say that,
yeah.
that also about the level of understanding, that maybe it's important to say that it's not a permanent thing. I mean,
No.
that when I was in Barcelona, I could see it, doesn't mean that a month later I can be in the same position. At that moment, maybe my level of understanding will be lower and I can get caught up in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at that. I think we carry our level of understanding with us, but we can occasionally cloud it over with some thoughts that we get caught up in. But I think generally, like people that, as we have a higher level of understanding, when we drop down, when we get caught up in some thinking, and we lose that, we've lost. We're now in a discomfortable feeling, but we've got a level of understanding that we're carrying with us. So that that the first thought that comes to us is, this won't last. This won't last if I don't feed it. So that understanding is still there. On the other hand, somebody who's at a low level of understanding wakes up one morning because they've lessened their grip on their negative thinking, and they're feeling really peaceful and good, but they're carrying their lack of understanding with them. So the first thought they have, and I had this many times, is, oh, well, this won't last. Nothing has changed in my life. Before I know it, I'll be depressed again. And of course, would get caught up in that thinking and get to go back down and then eventually say, see, I was right. It didn't last. Whereas the person that takes a level of understanding along with their sudden low feeling state, they get to be right also, because they leave their thinking alone until it passes. And then they say, see, I was right. It didn't last. So I hear what you're saying, Ofer, and I'm glad to hear what other people, but I think that at some level we carry that level of understanding. We may for the short term get triggered by something and appear to have lost it, but I think it's still with us. And that's what we draw upon to know which way we turn in those moments. But let me.
Yeah, I have to say though that I think, and this is what I think Ofer is referring to, because I had this one veteran that was doing really, really well despite a lot of previous troubles in my group, and he really felt like he was home free. He had several incidents where he was highly tempted by his former lifestyle in the presence of certain people that reappeared in his life and that kind of thing, and he saw beyond it and escaped from it, and he kept himself on the path he was trying to travel. And then he one day he got upset with somebody. He got into an argument with somebody, and he felt that he'd been wronged, and he was very distressed and upset. And he just went out and shot up heroin, and he almost died because he had been clean for long enough that you can't do that. You can't just go do what you used to do. Your body can't handle it. Fortunately, he was saved, by a deputy that had that reversing drug. And when I talked to him afterwards, he said, I knew better, but at that moment I couldn't do better. I couldn't see what I knew. And, he said, as soon as I came awake in the hospital, I realized what was I thinking. But, these things happen sometimes really fast before your level of understanding, can kick back in. You can look back on it and say, get upset with yourself, but you can't really predict always that you're going to save yourself in time, kind of thing. And and I told him, you don't want to beat yourself up. Every moment like that is a learning experience.
Absolutely.
But that's all you can do.
Right.
I think it was important for me to make that distinction, because sometimes it's kind of like, I don't know, when people go on a diet and they eat something bad and then you just drop the diet, so
Yeah, right.
it happens, and it's important to be self-compassionate about it, because otherwise some people they get so disappointed of themselves, so they lower the, it just it's like a slip, like a slope, how do you say,
Slippery slope.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you, Bill, that the level of understanding it's there, but sometimes it really is completely inaccessible in that millisecond in which you can make a decision that later on you wonder why you did it.
For me, if I look at it like a graph, that goes up, so it kind of like go like my level of understanding as I move along, so it goes up, and then every once in a while it falls down, but then it comes up back again. But there's always this, for me at least, I don't know, this is how I see it. There's like points when it goes down, but if I'm available to see it and learn from it, then I go up even higher. And if not, then sometimes I can get stuck, I don't know, I see it as a computer game, I don't know.
I think it's like the stock market.
I think
it's up and down, but the trend line is okay.
But I think what you just said, Ofer, is vital to the point that if I can take my getting caught up as information that there's a level that I'm at, but there's more levels. And I'm up against right now something that my level of understanding was not up to. So I've got an opportunity, again, the Chinese symbol for crisis is both danger and opportunity. So if we can start to see the times that we get caught up at our level of understanding, and I certainly, it's been for me in the 35-year journey, but and still is. But to the degree that when I'm lost, I see it as an opportunity to get as quiet as I can, and that there's an opportunity for me to go through a few more of those infinite number of doors of understanding that the next time something similar happens, as you said, Ofer, that you find that sometimes if you take it as something to learn from, that your level of understanding actually increases. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you'll be better protected the next time. And then the next time we get caught up, we've got another opportunity to learn some more. And Sid said, it's endless. You're not going to get to the end before you die. So give it up and be grateful for each step that you take. You know?
Well, I think that's the point of hope and faith, you know,
Yeah.
that you never lose hope that regardless of what happens, you have faith that you'll see it again. You know, you'll get through it and something else will, you know, you'll keep learning.
Right.
Once you're heading in the direction you want to go, you know, you'll have setbacks, but you're still moving in the direction you want to go.
You'll have lessons. You'll have lessons.
Yeah.
Those setbacks can be potential lessons, I guess.
Yeah, well, they all are. Yeah,
Yeah.
either that or you're not around.
Or like Ofer said, you instead of seeing them as lessons, you give up because you see yourself as a failure and you head the other way, you know. Huh?
Yeah.
So these next 2 pages are 2 of my favorites. So I'm gonna turn it over, let somebody else do that. But who's
That's
David?
Brad's
Brad?
turn.
Yeah. Oh, we've got the school. I'm sorry. The school teacher, the principal says, it's your turn, Brad. I have to give Judy stand.
I keep track of these things. I can't ever stop
She's the teacher. Yeah.
Thank you, Judy, for keeping track. Thank you.
Okay, Judy. Go ahead.
Yeah. When desires of your mind trouble your spirit, your life becomes turmoil. My advice is to learn to free yourself from too many desires. Life on earth is short, so beware of striving for fame and fortune. Many who find them never live to enjoy them. Many people would succeed in life if their abilities weren't so above their abilities. Many who strive for the moon begin their journey. Succeed in their life if their ambitions weren't above their abilities. Thank you. Many who strive for the moon begin their journey by tripping over their own feet. Yeah, it's some really down to earth, great advice here.
Yeah.
That he puts from his understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple, but very, very, very powerful.
The reason that this is has meaning for me is that first paragraph. In 1995, 12 years after I was exposed to the principles, after 21 years, before I met Sid, of 21 years of going in and out of depression, clinical depression, I had not been in depression for 12 years. And in 1995, 12 years of being a teacher and a student of the principles, I found myself in a fairly severe depression. I was having to effort to get myself to get up in the morning to go to work. I would, at noon, when my last patient of the morning, I would sit there with tears trickling down my cheeks. And I was struggling, and I think my ego got involved of I'm this wise teacher and student of the principles, and this shouldn't happen to me, and God forbid if anybody knew that Bill Pettit was having a depression. And I remember it was Labor Day weekend, and anytime I tried to figure out what it was, there was nothing. I mean, because I was in the state that I was in, my intellect was not where the answer was. And I remember giving up, and I went to my late wife, Sue, on a Friday before Labor Day. And I said, Susan, I need to quit. I need to give up here. I'm depressed. I'm barely functioning, and I need to give up. And if a little bit of medicine will help me right now, get my bearings, then so be it. And my good friend and that Judy knows, our Dr. Arlen Mirmo, it was an internist, and I had a whole cupboard in my office that I could have driven out on Friday evening and gotten any antidepressant I wanted. But I knew enough, even in that state of depression, I knew enough that that was silly to be treating myself. And so I said, this was Friday evening of Labor Day, I said, on Tuesday morning, I'm going to call Arlen after the holiday, and I'm going to ask him if I could come over at 5 o'clock that evening and get started on some antidepressant. And then I had, what I had done, I had decided I was going to do something, so I was no longer thinking about it. So I enjoyed the holiday weekend with my children and my wife, and as I got up Tuesday morning, the sun was shining and I was out of my depression. It was gone. It was gone. And I tell people, when you come out of the hole, when you've fallen into the hole, the more you try to figure out or see what got you there. It's like Super Mario. He could never see what he tripped over when he's down in the hole. But he had a buoyancy that allowed him to eventually come up and continue his journey. And when I came up, I said, you can take a peek back. And when I came up, I took a peek back to see if I could see what it was. And I did see that there was something, that first line, there was something in my life, some desire of my mind that I had no control over in my life, that I could not, that could not be changed. And I was unwilling to accept that. I was even willing to give away my well-being and my joy and my life to this thought of something that I couldn't have be the way I wanted it to be. So that line, when the desires of your mind trouble your spirit, your life becomes turmoil, hits home for me, because that's what happened with that depression 12 years after I met Sid. My advice is to learn to free yourself from too many desires. And as I gave up, and a realization, the old Francis of Assisi prayer, I guess, became alive to me. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That became really alive to me. And I started dropping desires that troubled my mind and my soul and my spirit. So I share that as a personal thing. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything about that before we go forward.
Now it's Ophir's turn.
Okay.
Wait, I lost.
Page 62.
Wait, I lost my. Okay. That was a beautiful story, by the way. So, everything on earth comes from one divine source. Our personal thoughts determine what we think of the form it has taken in our life. Thought is related to our five senses. Our senses have no ability to discriminate. They are controlled and informed by our personal power of thought. Without thought, our five senses would be of no value. Our five senses and our egos are but particles of the whole, just as the illusion of time and space are only particles of the whole. The answer people seek lies not in their separate beliefs, but in the realization that thought is the common denominator in all psychological and spiritual understanding.
Any thoughts? So to speak.
I just know that that end of that where it says on the end of that last paragraph Ofer just read is that thought is the common denominator in all psychological and spiritual understanding. I mean, sometimes when I just read that, I just drop into a space of gratitude.
Mm.
I mean, just that's true. That I can trust that. Even when I forget it, and I just keep putting more and more thought on top of whatever I'm into, but that I can come back and just trust that understanding right there for me. So.
for me, when I rephrase that sentence, it means that more or less everything is everything is just thought, which means everything is made up. Don't take
Yeah,
anything
right.
too seriously, you know, and no one really knows anything, so just go with it. For me, it calms me down, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
But it was like it was a process. At the beginning, it freaked me out.
Mhm. We'll
Because
talk about that, Ofer, because there may be some people out there that we're serving that are freaked out now. So, what
Yeah.
do you feel comfortable talking about that, or what what you saw that allowed you to not be freaked out any as
I don't
much?
know. I think it was it's just a matter of time. It's like it's a matter of letting go, you know, of knowledge.
Mm.
It's like not taking knowledge. I mean, knowledge is thought, and it's like once you are able to not. I mean, it's what became to me as reality became. It's like gradually became more like okay. It's like I can play intellectually with thoughts, and it's
Mm.
nice, but I don't take them too seriously. So
Mm.
it kind of takes the sting out of a lot of things, you know, now. So now it's like, I can't really, it's not, I usually don't find myself argue too much about like
Mhm.
things, you know, because it's like, okay, yeah, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
It's,
I know well what you mean. I used to get angry all the time. I was angry a number of
Yeah.
times a day, and I tell people there should be a warning because I'd start to get angry and then I'd start laughing because I saw who was making me angry. They were
Yeah.
they were in my underwear, and there was only room for one of us. So I saw who was doing it, and it was like unveiling the curtain in the Wizard of Oz. You find out who the wizard is that's scaring the hell out of people. It was me. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, Ophir, I was going to say when you said that, I thought, gee, that's how I got through my degree in psychology, because I had been involved in the principles for quite a number of years before I went back and got a doctoral degree in psychology. And of course, I had to study what everybody studies, and nobody was interested in what I had to say. And I remember thinking, you know, it's okay. This is people's thoughts, the best they could think about it until they thought something else. And when you look at the history of any field, you realize that people's thinking changes dramatically and they don't even acknowledge that. How did that happen? You know, we used to think that it was this and now it's that, or we used to think this, you know, and they just, you know, you study it as though it was all true. It's for some reason, and then something else was true, and no one ever says, gee, I wonder how we change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it just becomes okay. It just becomes okay. I agree with you that, you know, you just realize it's okay. People can have all the different thoughts they want. It's not a big deal. And you know, I had a conversation last week with another person who works in the same place that I see clients in as well, who said, you know, she saw a client while I was out getting my knee. She saw one of my clients and she read my notes, and she said, you know, I just couldn't relate to your notes about this client. I mean, she's a very troubled person. And I had written in my notes that she has troubled thoughts, but during this course of the session, once she got distracted from them, she started making sense of her life. Well, you know, in the person's mind who was upset about my notes, she said, well, how is she has to deal with those troubled thoughts. She didn't process them. And, you know, there was a part of me that, you know, that came back with a smart ass answer. I had a thought, and then I thought, no, you know, it's okay. That's her training, you know, and that's okay. You can see the client again. You're back, you know, and don't worry about it. It's, you know,
really
arguing
asking
with people's thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. At some level, she was really asking, you know, is there some way that besides?
Yeah, well, you know, she didn't really honestly want to know. She just felt that I had failed to do something that she had done. She processed the thoughts, and indeed, the woman was more troubled when she left, which proved her to be correct about the fact that she was deeply troubled. You know?
Right.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, that's okay.
sometimes what we think we know, all of us,
Yeah,
gets in the way of us learning more.
right.
Right. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah,
I love the way you said, Ofer, that we
Yeah.
start to take our thinking less seriously.
No,
you
but
know.
I have to say that it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I'm a psychologist, so it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that everything, I mean, actually, I don't think so. I think it doesn't mean that everything is either right or wrong.
Mhm.
No.
It means, I mean, a lot of the things I studied, I still use at my clinic and are very helpful.
Uh-huh.
And so it's kind of like finding, it's really hard for me to say, but it's like working in different level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and some levels, it's like, okay, it's like learning how to drive a car, but you still sometimes need to fix the car. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You also need to know the mechanics of the car. Am I making sense? It's really hard for me to explain, but
That makes sense.
What I hear is good, better, best.
Mhm.
That there's times that you do different things depending on where the person is. Huh?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be the same as giving medicine to somebody
Yeah. It's exactly, that's a good
because
example.
they really need to quiet down. Yeah. And they really need to quiet down, and that's the best that you
Hard
can
for
do.
them to hear when they're having 3 panic attacks a day,
Right.
or
Exactly.
when they're hearing loud voices and they're telling them to kill themselves and they don't understand that it's a thought with special effects, right? So you might have to quiet them down.
Yeah.
Well, I'm aware of the time. We've gotten a little over 30 minutes this time, but we finished the chapter on thought. And when we meet again, we will start with the duality of life
Okay.
on page 67.
Okay. Mark my
Okay,
book.
folks. Any last pearls anyone wants to drop on us? If not, we'll
Could I share something?
absolutely.
So I think I've mentioned to you all before that I've created this online program for veterans, and originally through the Center for Sustainable Change, which then closed before it ever got up online. And so I've worked out a deal with Rudy, who is putting up he has a huge mailing list, and he's completely redoing the 3 Principles Movies site. And I'm going to put a trailer for the course, which is going to be housed on my website. It'll still be free. I'm just not gonna worry about it. I'll find other ways to make the money to pay for what I need to pay for. And so pretty soon there will be a free available online self-directed course in which I've made every effort to take the basic understanding of how thinking and our experience works and break it into small, tiny segments of, little videos of 2 to 7 minutes in segments no longer than 30 minutes so that veterans can access it. And hopefully it's called Peace for Veterans. I'll let you know when it's online, and I hope you will take a look, and if you think it's worthwhile, be sure to offer it to people as a supplement.
Very good.
So, I'm very grateful to Rudy for wanting to promote it, and I'm going to ask other people that have websites if they wouldn't mind mentioning it once in a while. It'd be great.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, we'd be excited to hear when that's ready.
Yeah, it'll be very soon. The videos are all being put up on my website now, so it's going to be very soon.
And down the road, it'll be interesting to see when we finish this project, how in what ways they might integrate or
yeah, well, this is going to become a supplement to that for sure.
Okay.
An opportunity.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
the only book I'm recommending
is what book? The Missing Link?
The Missing Link, yeah.
Okay, folks. See you next month.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.